Welcome to the Bladtcast. I'm Christian Blatt reporting for duty. Welcome to a show that unfortunately we find ourselves in a situation where we're looking back and remembering the great Norm MacDonald, but there is, of course, also something delightful about taking the time to look at some of those memories. And as always, I am Christian Blatt. Down below, the one and only Coltrane, not on Twitter, not on Instagram, not on Twitch, not on anything, right?
Yes, exactly.
Just exactly the way he likes it. And somebody who looks like he's in the middle of a first player shooter game is the one and only Will Sterling, who Will, tell us about your new friend, the little roly-poly on your face. I mean, that is a thing of beauty. I love it.
Yeah, I'm coming to you, Christian, from outside of some fucking high school.
Wait a minute. Beach. So you're hanging out outside of a high school with a creepy porn star mustache?
I'm literally outside of a high school. It's really great. It's really great.
Just get ready for this episode to also be known as Exhibit A.
I forgot that we even texted about this late last night. Put it on my phone. Forgot. Was on my way to the gym on my bicycle, and my phone notified me, and I was like, shit. So now I'm doing this from my phone, and got the mustache because, it's good to change things up every once in a while.
Dominica Saxon wants to know if you're on a Segway because
no.
He's just got his bike. But he has named you officially Pornstache Sterling. So I hope that sticks.
I was wondering if the Will Tourage was going in an entirely different direction now.
It could be,
Look, there is a vacancy in adult film royalty with, of course, the hedgehog Ron Jeremy heading behind bars and currently residing there for the foreseeable future. So
he is. Wait, what?
Oh yeah. You should Google Ron Jeremy. Yeah, he was up to some bad stuff. And
got it. I mean, that's not a surprise.
You should Google Ron Jeremy News.
yeah. Ron Jeremy News, not Ron Jeremy Nudes, which would be one of those autocompletes that are already in there. Sam comments that seeing the mustache, he actually thought you were Liev for a second. So I think that, you know what, it's not nice to name call. Will has taken some time. So there's a few things that I want to talk about, some of my personal experiences. I first met Norm MacDonald when I was an intern on Saturday Night Live in 1998, and I'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff as we go along. But I want to talk about in the capacity of doing the radio show. And there is, of course, the, simple fact that we had the opportunity, Norm was a weekly guest on the radio show for a long time. And some of my favorite memories are when he was a weekly guest on the radio show. And Coltrane, you'll remember that he was, in theory, a weekly guest on the radio show. But we didn't always have him when we were supposed to. He was not easy to get a hold of, and you kind of had to let him come to you. I had numbers for him. It didn't matter. I had an email address. I got one response ever. I looked it up. I got one response ever in all the time that I knew him. It was after I told him that I enjoyed his book, and he just said, "Thanks, Christian." And I'm like, "All right, I got that. At least I got that from him." But it was great because it was definitely comedy Russian roulette. You didn't know if you were going to get Norm, and if you did get him, you really didn't know what you were going to get, right, Ken?
Yes, that is very accurate. Because he's one of those people that just he was what you think he was. The interactions that I had with him were exactly how I would expect an interaction with Norm MacDonald to go. It was just he's one of those people that's just funny, without trying to be funny. So it just works. And so yeah, his availability just sort of fit that profile of maybe not.
And there's been a nice outpouring of fans of the old radio show, and obviously people who appreciated what an important part of that show Norm was. And we had some people reminded me that some of their favorite moments were when Norm was not scheduled to call in, but he called in anyway. And it wasn't like his usual weekly spot. It might be in the middle of the show. And it was like, Dennis, Norm's on the phone. Should we take him? It's like, of course we should take him. And there are some great compilations out there on YouTube, and fortunately, some friends of the old radio show do have very extensive archives to the old show. So when I was looking for some of the specific memories in terms of Norm guest hosting the Dennis Miller Show for Dennis, there's of course something that always comes up. And, just a couple weeks ago when we were doing Bladtcast 450, this came up. And Will, I'm going to turn your mic back on, and you can leave your camera off if you would like. I'm sorry we made fun of your mustache.
That's okay. I'm on a busy ass street, so I keep trying to find cover, but there's really nowhere for me to go. So I really poorly timed this today.
No, that's all right. That's what happens when you add to your calendar when you're having cocktails. Or as Norm would say, when you add to your calendar when you're having cocktails. So, but did you get a chance to listen to the link that I sent you last night, even just a little bit of it, Will?
I sure did, yes.
So
Will's ex-girlfriend.
Will did not work on the radio show at the time that Norm guest hosted, and Ann Coulter was a special guest. So Will listened for the first time.
He guest hosted an episode or two while I worked there, but it wasn't this one specifically. He guest
hosted through 2011. I think he guest hosted a few times, but that was in 2008. And I think, Ken, you maybe had newly started working on the show.
I was just thinking about it. I think that was the day that I filled in.
I think you filled in. Yeah, I think you're right. You might have filled in for either Sabes or Munga. By the way, Munga really wanted to be with us today, but he was flying to Oklahoma for his real job. So he has some memories that I will share in a little bit. But Will, when you have a moment, I would like to know your reaction to hearing Norm MacDonald guest host, Ann Coulter as a guest. And those of us who've heard that segment know. And before I get you to react to it, Will, I'll give you a little time to cross the street safely. Remember, cross on the green, not in between. But Coltrane, as we think back on that moment, and when we talk about Norm and we talk about Norm guest hosting, that was really the first thing that came up when we talked about this just a couple weeks ago. But just your thoughts when you think back on Norm being courted on the phone by Ann Coulter. Ken looks a little. Well, it was for Ken. It was for Ken, so I could give you time to cross. But now he looks like he's frozen. So as they say in Frozen, we'll let it go and we'll let him jump in when he's unfrozen. But Will, your thoughts hearing it for the first time?
It was very funny. I feel like I'd heard clips of it before just because you guys had played it, because it was always this sort of funny, legendary thing. And I remember hearing that book title of hers so many times because she was constantly a guest on the show. And it was what was the name of the book? It was if Democrats had brains, they'd all be conservatives or something stupid.
Right. And yeah, because she usually, her books would come out about every year. And so every time that she would be on, you would have to mention it. And I believe that was the title of that book at that time. Yes.
But I just love her profusive love and adoration of Norm, and him just being yeah, it's well, yeah, it's the funniest thing to me is that she's obviously very politically charged. She kind of didn't care about talking about she wants to talk about, and Norm is struggling to talk about politics in a weird way. So it's just it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it was just the way that she's just oozing through the phone. And Sam points out, I never heard Ann get horny until I heard that segment. I thought that it was very funny, and I'm glad you got to hear it. And it is one of those things that I think a lot of people do remember when they think back on the old radio show. It is one of those defining moments. When the radio show had ended, there was actually a conversation about possibly including that in some of the best ofs, but then I think we decided that we would just actually use shows that were hosted by Dennis Miller. But as something that I mentioned on Twitter, I know for a fact that the last hour we ever had of the Dennis Miller Show, because the last month or so was all reruns, all best of shows, I made sure that the last hour was a compilation of Norm segments, and they spanned all the way back to 2008. Charlie Potatoes has a great memory that Norm actually interviewed Robert Duvall when Norm guest hosted one time. And that was the one and only time that Robert Duvall was on the Dennis Miller Show. So it was sort of one of those things that was pretty great, that we had that opportunity. And, he was also a fan of what they call outlaw country, Will. Norm was. And so was our old pal Munga.
Is that a genre of music? Outlaw country?
Outlaw country is indeed a genre of music. Outlaw country we're talking about, this was the kind of music that Norm enjoyed, and he really liked an artist named Billy Joe Shaver. And our pal Munga was also a fan of Billy Joe Shaver, and we had Billy Joe Shaver on one of those shows. Any of you who have the audio files probably have heard it and go like, oh, this is interesting. Okay. I think they had a good conversation. But Coelho went to see Billy Joe Shaver in Los Angeles. And he reached out to Norm and tried to get Norm to go to the show, and something you need to know about Norm is that he did not drive. There was one point in my life where I had known him and his producer, Lori Joe. I'd known them both a little bit for a few years. So I interviewed to actually be his assistant on something. And part of that job would have been driving him around, driving him to work and all of that. So, him getting back to the idea of, going to a concert, it was a little bit more involved. I mean, sure, there were taxis, but, to get Norm out, I think required a lot. So he didn't go to the Billy Joe Shaver show. But Coelho mentioned to Billy Joe Shaver that he had called Norm and asked him to come, but not saying that he was here going to be coming. I think Billy Joe misunderstood. So after every song, Billy Joe Shaver would be like, hey, is Norm here yet? And this is on the stage. And the answer was no. Norm, in fact, was not there for the show. And, it was definitely a distraction. So I'm sure in hindsight, Munga would have thought about I guess I should have told Billy Joe after the fact that I thought Norm might be there. Or, hey, surprise, Norm is here. He actually talked to Billy Joe Shaver on his Netflix show, I think. So it is somebody that he really admired and appreciated. Coltrane, we were talking, and by the way, Jason Molnar points out, coming in late, this must be the Ann Coulter story. We weren't really done with it. We were there in real time watching or listening to it unfold, but we could see Norm. And, he had this big grin, and he was blushing a little bit. He's like, because he asked him after, he's like, Norm, I think she liked it. Like, well, no. He's totally dismissive. This is a guy who allegedly banged Elle Macpherson when he was on SNL. So, this is a guy who you don't think, I mean, if you look at young Norm MacDonald, he's quite a looker. Colin Quinn once talked about I can't compete with that guy. He looks like Cary Grant, probably had some of the same interests as Cary Grant. But anyway, the thing that I want to say is we're listening to this and Norm's like a little kid, I think this girl might like me. Give us your enduring memories. And by the way, that was 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago. And it's still a pivotal moment in the history of the Dennis Miller Show.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look back, you think about it, you just think of the whole thing. But then when you start remembering it, where they were talking about and everything, it was one of those things that at first it's just kind of it just seemed friendly, just two people talking, kind of whatever. And then there was just one point where you're just wait a second. No, she's definitely flirting with him. And then she said something about her nightie. And it was just okay, that was when it was that was when you're just wait a second. This is Ann dropping in, going shooting her shot. And it's just casually dropping in oh yeah, just hearing my nightie. And it was I don't know, that whole thing was just really funny. And then you were talking about the aftermath where it's when she was gone and he's just
yeah.
It was just it was funny because you could really see it.
Yeah, and what I remember is just when she would talk, he was talking and she was just right. She was just whatever you're saying, dude, it doesn't matter. And I later got some background that she'd apparently been interested in Norm for some time. And through allegedly through a longtime SNL writer, Jim Downey, who was one of the writers of the original cast of SNL and shared an office with Bill Murray when he was first there. Great guy, also a guest on the Dennis Miller Show a few times. And I think they had a mutual contact, and she like tried to get to know Norm. So, you know, I would ask our regular guests to come on with guest hosts all the time. And sometimes they would say like, oh, you know, I'm a little busy, you know, whatever, especially because, you know, our guest hosts were usually at holiday time. Like this Norm MacDonald show was in like, I don't know, January 3rd. So it was like the beginning of the new year. And boy, Ann wrote right back. And I was like, oh, cool. She must like Norm. I had no idea, you know.
I mean, it definitely adds context. Like if it just came out of nowhere, it still would have been funny. But like adding a little more context of like, you know, she was trying to like talk to him and then got her opportunity on this show. That was great.
Jason Molnar, I was working while listening to that podcast. As it kept on going, I had to stop and just listen to the interview. Yeah, I think it was hard. You know, interesting, something that I think a lot of people probably don't know, because I didn't post pictures from it, but just a month or like about a month and a half after that, I was in Washington, D.C. for CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee. And I guess the C in that sense is conference, but in any case, and I've talked about before how I was there with Andrew Breitbart, and being at CPAC with Andrew Breitbart was, you know, like waltzing through the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Paul McCartney. Like I couldn't walk through a room with Breitbart. Everybody wanted to talk to him, but we went out drinking with Ann Coulter. And I have pictures of me and Andrew and Ann, but Ann is so drunk in these pictures. I'm like, I can't post these. So
you could have shared them with us.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? I should have done. My sister lived in DC at the time, and I told her, I'm like, you cannot post these pictures. You know, I had to tell her, I'm like, you can't. Right. But I definitely should have shown you guys now that you mentioned, and I will dig them up, and we can share them now that it was so long after the fact. But I definitely remember. I bring it up because one, I'm a shameless name dropper, but two, I bring it up because I made sure to mention. Oh, it was so great to have you on with Norm MacDonald. So yeah. But in any case, William, I like that you look like you're laying down now. Are you on the ground?
No, I made it to a bike rack, so I'm sitting down.
So you actually like deposited yourself in the bike rack.
Guess what I'm in front of, Christian? A little purple under there.
What is that little purple there?
I'm at the PF.
PF Chang's? Oh, Planet Fitness. That's hey, when you're done with us, are you going to get a pump?
That's right. That's, hopefully my foolishness, you'll at least forgive, because the intention was to get a pump.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, come on. Coltrane, I don't know. I mean, I think that as men, there are a few things that will excuse most behavior for. One, chicks. If you're trying to get something, all bets are off. The idea of bros before hoes, that comes from people that didn't have really close guy friends. Whoever said that, I'm going to just assume it was a woman, because the hoes always go first, and so it's like, if Will blew us off, it's like, oh, there's a mildly attractive girl. There's like a 4.5 that just walked by. I got to go. I'm like, that's cool. And then the other thing, of course, is getting a pump,
Yes.
Cause like if Will ditched us for a chick, he's not our ride home right now. We're still able to talk. We can still do the show. If he was going to leave us, in 29 Palms while he, hitched a ride back to LA, then there might be some problems. But Will,
don't rule it out. Don't rule out 29 Palms.
No, by the way, I would love to go there. If there's room for me to be an extra in your movie this winter, please let me know. I don't need any lines, but
okay. I mean,
I do want to be. I do want to be in your next radio drama. But in any case, what I really want to ask you is, you spent some time on the comedy stage, and just in terms of appreciating Norm MacDonald, I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then, you did tweet out one of my favorite jokes that Norm tells.
Yeah, that's
you don't have to get it. You don't have to get it word for word, but why don't you share that and some of your thoughts just about Norm as a comedian?
I feel like the first time I heard that, I feel like it was a time that he was either guest hosting or he called into the show, but he was talking to Dennis about working for him, like being a writer on Right? Didn't he say he submitted a joke?
So Norm was a writer on Dennis's syndicated Tribune show. It was a late night show in 1992. And he shared an office with a guy named Drake Sather, who also gone much too soon. They're just two of the darkest, just most twisted comedic minds of the 20th century. So he worked on that show with Dennis. Yes.
Got it. So but I remember like somebody asked Norm like, oh, who did you ever expect to like be a big celebrity after SNL or like whatever it was? And he was like, no, I expected it to be Dennis. And Dennis was like, yeah, that's never going to be me. Because he was like, I did Bordello Blood and then the spotlight was too big for me. Like, I just love that Norm also thought that Dennis was going to be a big like movie star, which then like having worked with and for Dennis for like that would never have happened in a million years. But
but let me just interject. So Dennis not being a movie star isn't anything about ability. Like on screen, Dennis is very funny, and I spent my money to see him in Bordello of Blood. But it's the hours and the schedule.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, doing a podcast from his home for 3 of the previous 4 years, that is perfect for him. Doing a radio show that was almost exclusively done from his house. That is the look at this point in his career. Yeah.
But so the joke he said Norm submitted for Dennis's show was he's like, I feel bad for the homeless guy, but I feel really bad for the homeless guy's dog because he's thinking this is the longest walk I've ever been on.
That's in like Norm's first special. And yeah, that is a classic Norm joke. That was one of Dennis's favorites. But the actual way that and Dennis told this story a couple times on the podcast. The way that Norm got hired on that show was, Norm was recommended, like Dennis, I think, knew who he was. And it was, he wanted to be a writer, but they needed him to do a packet. Anybody who's ever submitted to a talk show has written a packet. I've written so many, you'd think that I would have been a writer on a lot of shows, but, you'd be wrong. But I've written a lot of those packets. And Norm was just like, I don't really do packets. He's like, but I'll send him a joke. And if he likes the joke, he can hire me. And if he doesn't like the joke, that's fine. No hard feelings. And I can't give the quite setup to the joke just because I don't really remember what it was. But it was a story about Jeffrey Dahmer. And it talked about how the trial was beginning. And the punchline was, in Dahmer's defense, he said, but they started it. So that was the joke that Dennis was like, well, you got to hire this guy. And he said that a lot of the jokes that he would get from Norm and Drake Sather was just like, I can't say these on TV, but these are some of the funniest jokes I ever heard. And Jason Molnar has another, the homeless are a source of entertainment for the late Norm MacDonald. Jason says, love Norm's joke about giving the homeless guy his fried chicken, then getting locked out of his apartment. Sam mentions that Andy Summers of the Police worked for Dennis on the Tribune show, but only for part of it because he did not enjoy doing that show. So then he was replaced as a band leader later in the run of that show. But in any case, getting to have Norm guest host was just a lot of fun. And, he was not paid handsomely for it. He did it because it was fun. But one of the things that Coelho said, because I sent him that whole show with the Billy Joe Shaver interview, and he was just talking about like, I forgot how good he was at this. And I said, I wish Norm was still around so that I could text him. I was like, hey, you remember Munga? Yeah, he said he forgot how good you were. But he also, because that's not what he did, but he could have very easily, hosted a show, and he did do a podcast. But the funny thing was that Coelho was listening to this old show, and in the studio, he had comedian Todd Glass, who Norm starts off with saying like, Todd's kind of a gay name, isn't it? And it's a manly name for a comedian like Shecky Green. He spends a lot of time on this. And this is also in 2008, I think. And in 2012, Todd Glass came out of the closet as gay. But in 2008, he wasn't. And I thought about like, if you could have told Norm, like, hey, remember when you had Todd Glass on and he kept saying that his name was gay? He's actually a gay man, and he came out as, he would probably been like, I don't think he would have been like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. He probably would have thought it was funny, but I tell that story because one, the the files are out there. This is not like a secret, but I do think people don't realize that Norm was actually a really sweet guy, and a friend of mine who I got to know, he worked as like a writer's assistant on Saturday Night Live. And after he had been there for a little while, Norm was still doing Weekend Update. And Norm was like, just stopped and said, hey, would you have any interest in submitting jokes to Weekend Update? And he was very interested, this guy. I didn't ask him if I could tell the story, so I would just say a guy that I know. And he was happy to do it. And he had a joke that got into like the first time he submitted, it got into the dress rehearsal and there wasn't a laugh for it. And he's like, oh, that's all right. It got on the dress rehearsal. But they actually used it in the show because Norm and Jim Downey thought that the joke was funny. And then they didn't care that the audience didn't laugh at it. Of course, Norm got fired from Weekend Update about 6 weeks later. So, but it is something that I learned a long time ago from when I was an intern, was that, yes, how something plays in the studio audience is a factor, but you shouldn't make all the decisions for your show based on like 200 tourists who are sitting there, who happen to be able to get free tickets. And the punchline for the joke, it was something about it was a car accident. And the tag involved the people for the ethical treatment of sand was the punchline. And I think that it was just the turn of phrase that Norm really liked. And I always found, interactions with him to be funny. And, I wrote about this on Facebook that I don't pretend that I knew him well, but over the course of a long time, I had interactions with him. And it was always sort of like in awe of this guy who made me laugh, which honestly, it was always the same thing with Dennis. It's just, I've known Dennis for so long that eventually it has to go away, or like, what are you doing? But with Norm, it was always sort of this weird thing that I was just like, oh my God. And sort of the defining moment for me was when I was an intern at SNL, he thought it was really funny that my name was Christian. So when I would answer the phone, he'd be like, hey, is this Jew? Which, I admit that that's probably not the funniest joke ever, but one of the guys who is one of the funniest people on the planet had just written a joke about me. And I was just like, oh my God, he's got a name for me. And so when we get to a point where I went to New Orleans for spring break, it's that same year, and he was performing at Tulane where my friend went at the time. So at the show, I found Lori Joe, who she worked for him forever, not for him. She worked with him forever. I think it's important to make the distinction. And, she was always the way that if you didn't know where Norm was, you could talk to Lori Joe, and he always called her Lojo. It's like, hey, Lojo. You just hear him saying that all the time. So I found Lori Joe. I found Lojo at Tulane. And she brought me backstage to say like, hey, Norm, look who's here. And he just looked at me. He literally had no idea who I was. And I was just like, I kind of love this moment. I was like, well, oh no, I'm the guy that I work with Danny Wilson, who's a guy that he was friends with the whole time he was there. And it's like, and whenever I answer the phone, you call me Jew. And he's like, oh my God, it's Jew, So he did know that. And it was just sort of this like funny thing. And then if you listen, there's a compilation of appearances from the old Dennis Miller radio show. He clearly, just believing in reduce, recycle, reuse, he sort of recycles this, this idea of, my name being Christian and being a Jew. And our pal Sam Whitfield actually isolated that and sent it to me. So I thought it was very funny. But as I mentioned, I had, a number of times to interact with him. I didn't live in Los Angeles yet. And I had a couple of interviews. I interviewed to work on Scrubs. I interviewed with Norm because I was able to keep in touch with Lori Joe. And, I would have been his assistant on a show. He did a few minutes with Stan Hooper. This is not his TV show called Norm, where Artie Lang was his brother, because obviously they look so much alike. And so, I stayed in touch. And then when I started working for Dennis, it was like, he was wrapped by Brillstein. So Gervitz was his manager as well. So it was very easy to, continue. Like I had a professional reason to continue talking to Norm. And there would be times, especially when he was going to be on every week, he would want to talk to me beforehand and like figure out what he wanted to talk about and stuff like that. So I would talk to Norm just me and Norm, like on the phone, not being recorded, unfortunately. I talked to him for like an hour, and there would be times where I'm like, I can't believe this, but I need to try and get off the phone with Norm MacDonald right now because I think he might keep me on the phone for 3 hours. And I'm like, I'm sitting in my office in Culver City. I am nowhere near home. I got to go. I've been up since 4 a.m. And, it was great. And, yes to, just because I consider myself lucky to have had experiences like that. I always remember fondly talking to Gary Shandling for like an hour once before he was on. And Carvey, it was like regularly, he wanted to go over everything. And so he's like trying out voices on me. I'm like, what am I going to do? Be like, Dana, that voice needs a little work, and it was the same thing with Norm. I was like, whatever you want to talk about. And that's why I think it worked so well having him as a regular guest on Dennis's show, because Dennis understood like, we just kind of just let him go, let him do whatever he needs to. But the problem being that the format of like radio, I mean, you can both sort of attest to the idea that it's like you got maybe, you got 8, maybe 10 minutes if you really push the other breaks, but you can't talk to somebody in the way you can on a podcast or a satellite radio show. So doing that kind of stuff was always like, there's a very memorable time when Norm called in at Thanksgiving and he did this poem of all the things he's thankful for. And it was like really, he had clearly spent time working on it and it was all planned out, but we had to take a break in the middle of it. And that's what people don't remember, because I think the way that it was edited for the best of, we just put it all together. But it's like he's in the middle and then it's just like, we'll be right back. And it's like, it was infuriating because I think that Dennis really found himself as doing the podcast and doing long form interviews as opposed to radio interviews. And really, I think that old fashioned broadcast radio is really for simple people who can't really think for very long, don't have much to say. And that's why I'm glad to bring in someone who still works in old fashioned radio. The one, the only, somebody who likes to party. Liev, how are you, sir?
Well, look at that. We got TK right there.
He's right there.
What's up, buddy? You look good.
Yeah, you too. I tried to, send you a text about TiVo time, but apparently you changed your number and didn't tell me, dick.
And Liev, before we talk about Norm, I think that it's very important that we acknowledge Will's porn star stash. And Will, you muted yourself and I can't unmute you, so you have to unmute you. But can we just marvel at Will's porn star stash? Yeah. Yeah, look at that. That's a thing of beauty.
Forget the stash. Let's talk about his latest post. And he's been posting these for a while, and I admire it. I'm so envious of having.
You want to wear a corset and pose naked?
Yeah.
We can arrange that.
Good. You look great. Like, I'm so jealous.
Will has what we like to call tasteful nudes. Do you think that that's fair to say?
Yes.
Will, I find them to be very tasteful.
Yeah.
And I think that Liev finds himself wondering what they taste like. So in that way, I think that what I was just come on in the honor of Norm MacDonald. How are we going to come on here and not make a gay joke or two?
Hey,
but for people who want to see, go to @WillSterling _ and I think that
in there, for good measure.
Come on, let's. There we go. All right. I got no complaints. Look, if I looked like this, I would sit around the house like this. So.
Not very comfortable, that thing.
No, you should be comfortable. It makes Liev uncomfortable, I think, because of how it makes him feel. Speaking
not uncomfortable at all.
Speaking of uncomfortable, people want to know how's your health, buddy? How you doing?
Oh man. COVID's been a pain in the butt. Not gonna lie. And
isn't that weird? Isn't that so weird?
Yeah,
that's what I heard. I keep hearing that, and it's like, whoa.
Now, I was under the impression that it was a hoax, but I guess you have proven that it's not a hoax. And by the way, Can we just say thank you to Liev for taking the time to talk to us, because he should be busy packing. He'll be flying to Washington tomorrow for the Justice for J6 rally. He'll be at the Capitol. He's having a family reunion there.
No, the absolute last thing, and I think, there's obviously several things with COVID that are just absolutely horrific. A lot of people have lost loved ones, and people have gotten very sick.
Sure.
The worst thing about it is that really nobody knows the impact it's having on people when they actually get sick, and it's causing such hurtful, angry conversations between people.
Yeah. Well, and something that you mentioned that, like, just to be serious for a minute, is that you talked about, like, you were getting better, but you would still get really confused in the middle of things. Like, you'd sort of have this like fog, and like right now you might not even know who you're talking to.
Yeah. Who are you?
Well, that's what show business says every day.
Are you the dude from the birdcage? Are you Nathan? Is your name Nathan?
Yes, it is. And I'll tell you,
honestly, for me, I mean, yeah, now that I've had COVID, and fortunately, and I was very fortunate, especially as, somebody who has smoked cigarettes for a long period of his life. And that was absolutely terrifying when I got COVID. I'm like, okay, how is this going to impact me? And yes, I know the conversations about getting vaccinated. My fiance is vaccinated, and I have made the decision for myself to get vaccinated. I'm going to do that.
Which I thought was interesting is when I saw you back in March, you talked about how very early on you bought Moderna stock. And I was like, you know what? This guy is actually pretty smart. And I think that your fiance is clearly very smart. What I always say about my wife is that she's brilliant except for her choice in men. So, I say that about my wife. I can say that about your fiance as well.
You're a prize.
Well,
You're a prize.
So
thank you.
Back to my point about, the worst part about COVID is just me saying those words. I already know with this panel of guys who I respect, it's going to cause a conversation that I don't want to be a part of. And it's going to cause a discussion and an argument maybe.
Yeah.
Just because everybody has their thoughts and feelings, and everybody is right.
And believe me, I when I heard you were sick, when I hear that anybody's sick, even public figures, I always think like, well, I hope that they get better. The fact is that, like, you still have people who, what they like to do is they, like they'll see that there's a picture of like the Sturgis bike rally, and they decide like, well, my job is now to talk about like how many of these people are going to die. And I'm like, well, Jesus, why would you say that? And you know what?
Yeah.
Even in your personal Instagram, after you were sick, there was like a picture. One of your latest pictures was you were at a concert, and somebody commented like, probably where you got Rona. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, I guess I kind of contributed to that privately, because Wojcinski posted a story where he's like, man, this COVID's been really rough. Does anybody have any tips to how to get better? And I said, get fucking vaccinated, dummy.
Well, it's too late at that point. Like, once you get it, you can get vaccinated. Yeah.
But I do think it's funny that you made a lot of money off of this. And
well, no, come on.
And Will's not right, or he's not wrong. He's not, and who knows if he's right? And I hate that. I hate this guy. I'm not smart enough to say whether or not you should get vaccinated. I'm saying I'm going to get vaccinated because I want to.
Well, look, because, and I think that that's what it comes down to. It doesn't matter, what celebrities are telling people to do it, or, although I will tell you that, I was at Dodger Stadium for some really miserable games against the Mets, but I was there for like 4 straight days. And boy, I wish I wasn't. But anyway, they made the announcement. It's like, and up on the reserve level, if you get vaccinated here, we'll give you tickets to a free Dodger game. All of a sudden, there were like 1,000 people getting vaccinated. Yeah. So, and I was just like, well, I'm the sucker who just went and got vaccinated without any free Dodger tickets, and I've gotten my free Krispy Kreme donuts. I mean, obviously, take a look at this face, but, I haven't really enjoyed most of the perks. So when it comes to everything, I hope that everybody stays healthy. And Liev, I know that you are feeling better, but yet, ironically, you still have to be quarantined, not because of yourself, right?
Yeah, I came in contact with another person who has COVID, and again, the science is out there. I definitely respect science. I definitely respect everybody who is fighting to make sure that we all stay safe and better. But the answers just aren't there. And case in point, I mean, if you look at science, I have antibodies right now, right? I just had COVID, and yet I've been told to be quarantined for 5 days. Where 5 days came from, I have no idea.
Well, it used to be 14, then it was 10, and now it's 5. But, Liev, it's a good thing that you're not a single man, because if you were, you could probably be out at the bars down there in the OC being like, anybody want some of these antibodies? Come on. Can I put my antibodies into your body?
I think the extremists on both sides have been incredibly moronic. And I wish there was a way where everybody could come and reach a middle ground. And hopefully that happens sooner than later, because in my opinion, and again, it's my opinion, everybody has their own opinion. I think a lot of people have been very stupid. And honestly, when it comes down to it, just respect each other. Yeah. And I hope we can reach that point. And I don't know what it's going to take to get to that point. But it's sad. It's been a very sad past 18 months.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think that, and we've had people that have been on during shows that we've done. Corby and I think Dominicus Saxon talked a little bit about how, he had it and just some of the treatments that he had. And Corby hasn't been vaccinated, but he was able to do some therapeutics. And, it's just anybody that I hear that has it, I hope they feel better. And yes, that's any public figure that I've heard that has it. There isn't anybody that I'm just like, well, that's what. So
I'll say this just to wrap it up. I mean, my fiance is vaccinated, and her symptoms were a little bit more severe in the initial stages. However, she did recover better. She lost her sense of taste and smell. I did not. We definitely had different symptoms. I am still dealing though. What am I on week 4 almost? Post COVID, and she's feeling significantly better than I am. So, hey, right there.
And that's what I think we're tending to hear. Obviously, this group of nerds, we talked about how both Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley from Kiss both were vaccinated and got sick. And they both said, it was a couple of days where I really didn't feel good. But then they were fine. Of course, they're right back out on tour, still doing meet and greets. God bless them. And Will, I did just get an email. We'll be there. There'll be 2 tickets waiting for us in Chula Vista on the 25th of September.
Hey,
so
where's TK's and mine invite?
Kesha's there.
Favorite place to ever go is Chula Vista. He even mentioned that last time, right before he left to go back to Boston.
I actually think that TK does like to give a shout out every now and again to Chula Vista, Escondido. Hacksaw Hamilton, if anybody wants to Google.
Brilliant.
Funny comment from Dominicus Saxon. I'm surprised Liev hasn't started selling his antibody essence just yet. He also says it sucked. He had to use a nebulizer at home for a couple of weeks. It'll take more than that to take Saxon out. And my daughter has asthma, so she uses a nebulizer a lot, and I can only imagine having to just sort of leave that thing strapped on. She gets to watch.
I can only imagine your anxiety throughout this whole process, then worrying about your daughter. That must have been we talked about on your podcast, but wow.
Well, I know you have a lot of episodes backed up, but you'll catch up before.
I'm on episode. What are we on? 3,432.
This is 452, and in true Liev fashion, we tried to have you on to celebrate our landmark 450, and here you are 2 weeks later. So I think that's perfect.
I used to love doing the Bladtcast. I can't believe I wasn't there for that. I loved the Bladtcast when I worked with Dennis Miller, and what an honor that was to work with you gentlemen. But man, when we stayed 2 hours later to do the Bladtcast, oh my gosh, I was just over the moon, happy, thrilled.
The best was, we've talked to Jeff about this, that he started and he had to go to his afternoon job. And I was like, oh yeah, but you're not done.
You still got to do the Bladtcast.
Yeah, you have to stay and do the Bladtcast.
I remember waiting
go ahead,
in the booth, you and doing Coltrane's Corner, and I would wait for an hour. Okay, I'll come get you when we're ready for you. And then just sitting around what? When are we going to talk about the nerd stuff for hours?
I'm surprised
Ken just read Daily Mail stories.
I'm surprised nobody's been canceled yet, just because I know. Just because we all, we hang out, we get comfortable. I've gone gambling with and we've had drinks, but we genuinely do like each other, and when we hang out, we have a great time. But having a great time and drinks causes loose tongues, and
well,
I feel like there's a reason
convenient.
a lot of the first episodes are not available to the
public. The first like 115 aren't really out there. You can find some of them, but Will, at one point you like listened back to some of the stuff and you were like, oh yeah, I guess if this gets me, Yeah,
you know what? At this point, it's like it's gonna be what it's gonna be. Like we're so far past like I don't know. Everyone's a piece of shit. So just bust me now and let's move past it.
The best honesty ever, and the best answer. That's absolutely accurate.
At some point in time, everyone has behaved like a piece of shit. Like I think that's pretty much factual, regardless of who you are.
Will,
so like.
They're actually asking you to host the Oscar. Oh wait, no, never mind. They've changed their mind. They listened to the Bladtcast.
I know, because of something I laughed at that you said.
Yeah, I know. It's true. Just laughing is what can get you canceled now. It's like Shane Gillis lost his job on SNL because of what he said, but also because of what he laughed at, on his podcast. Dominica Saxon also chimes in. I feel Christian's worry for his kids. My 27-year-old daughter has asthma and is a nurse. So even with all the precautions she takes, I still worry about her. And I think that's what it comes down to, is that I worry about the fact that my kids are nowhere close to being vaccinated. But there's also, look, my son goes to public school. They test them every week, and some parents opted out of it. And I'm like, no, I'd like to know. So that's fine. And I think that helps. But in general, kids are tough and they usually do well. The great Thomas Parham in the chat, Will, he says, hear to Bujenski's call for extremists on both sides to chill. And I think that would go a long way. If only Norm MacDonald and Coulter had gotten together.
Is crazy.
I know, seriously, but that's okay because
no, guys, seriously, just like seriously, I just got to say this. I got to get it off my chest. And it's like, no, really,
just because in my position, and it's been I'm not gonna lie, it's been a very challenging 18 months because you want to make 100 people laugh, and to make 100 people laugh, you're gonna have to offend 100 people. I feel like, and where's that joke that you tell that's absolutely perfect? And really, in the end, like you just want everybody to get along, and I don't know what that answer is to get everybody to get along.
Well, there is one thing that brings us all together, and it is something that I had planned for 2 weeks ago, and it is, of course. What time is it? Oh, yeah.
Fans and everybody in Gator Nation, I'm sorry.
I made that.
One thing, you have never seen any player in the entire country play as hard as I will play the rest of the season.
Right.
You never see a team play harder.
The great New York Mets player.
Gonna run, jump pass, going to the end zone, and a touchdown. David Nelson caught the jump pass in the end zone. David Nelson scores. The Florida Gators have won another BCS national championship. They're second in the last 3 years. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Let's do it again.
Oh my
God. And obviously the irony is that you're coughing at the end of that. The version that I have is you coughing. So there's two things about Tebow we need to talk about. The first is he was cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I feel like that's like getting
waxed the other night. So just saying, coincidence?
Yeah, I feel like that's like getting cut from the LA Kiss.
Yo, first of all,
take that back.
Nobody did worse than Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, you mean this last week? No, absolutely not.
What?
Yeah, you want to talk about a guy who does? You want to talk about like when you're a kid and you have to wash the dishes and you don't want to, you just drop a couple of plates and it's like, all right, get the hell out of the kitchen. I think Aaron Rodgers is like, so you sure you don't want to get rid of me? Man, all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah, is he eating crow right now, or was that on purpose? Like that was just. Horrific.
I think he put 10 grand on the Saints. I'm just guessing.
I think he tried. I think he was like, he went out for the first series. He was like, all right, let's see what happens. And then it was like, nah, I'm not feeling it today. Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow. But Liev, do you think that his Tebow's NFL career can continue? He was in the New York Mets organization for a long time, and I think he decided to stop playing baseball at exactly the wrong time, because I feel pretty confident the Mets would have called him up this year just to try and sell some tickets. But did he go back to broadcasting, or is there still hope for your one-time hero?
I think he'll go back to broad. I mean, Tim Tebow is he has put himself in a position to where, he can be mocked, he can be joked, but at least he tried. and he tried hard and he worked hard to get to where he is. So, you know what? I give him all the credit in the world. And I watch the news stations. I watch ESPN and Fox Sports and whatever, and they can joke on him all they want. How inspiring. I find him to be very inspiring, and whatever he does next, he'll put his heart into and excel.
And of course,
I really feel like
GB squared.
Liev, COVID has given Liev a new perspective on life, because this is too serious. Everything he's saying is no, really.
Well,
just feel it.
He's been trained to be perfectly inoffensive because radio could go any which way.
I work at a family.
You are not to have your opinion.
And
yeah.
God is good.
Yeah, I mean, GB squared, right? I mean, come on. So speaking of Tim Tebow, I know that you're holding your Tim Tebow book, even though you have it every night when you go to bed.
Yeah.
But you have it for a reason. And one of the times when we had the great Norm MacDonald guest host, the Dennis Miller Show, you had an interaction with him, and I wanted you to share that with our audience.
So it's really cool, and I can't remember. I think I'm remembering it correctly, and maybe TK, I believe you were behind me. He asked to sign my Tim Tebow book, right? He saw it and he wanted to sign it.
Yeah, because that made it funny.
Yeah, right. It was hilarious. So I had this Tim Tebow book. We're all sitting there. First of all, I want to say Jason Sudeikis is one of the coolest people I've ever met, along with Norm, along with Dennis, along with you guys. But
I can't remember.
I remember me and Jason Sudeikis, and he was actually really nervous to be in the same room with Norm MacDonald. And
I've told this story that I sat in the studio. It was Norm and Dennis, and Sudeikis was on SNL at the time. He was in town, and so he sat in too. And I mean, I was just talking about man, I can't believe that. What was I doing in that room? And he's like, how do you think I feel? And I'm like, dude, you're on Saturday Night Live. And I didn't know this. But one day you're going to be Ted Lasso. So yeah, you can be in that room. But I've never accomplished anything, as my wife repeatedly tells me, so I really didn't belong in that room. But I'm so glad I had 1 hour in my life where I felt like I was in show business. And that it was that 1 hour that I did, which there's video of that out there if people want to find it, that hour of the show. But so that time that Norm was in studio, he saw your Tim Tebow book and he asked if he could sign it, right, Leah?
Right. He asked if he could sign it. I thought, okay, that's weird. But it's Norm, and Norm's delivery. He goes like, "Hey, you got the Tim Tebow book? I want to sign it." Oh, okay, Norm, sign it. All right, I'm gonna sign it. And then I go, "Can I get a picture?" And while I'm taking a picture, I can tell he wants to say something more. And he goes, "After we take the picture, I put the book down. I'm trying to get back to work." He goes, "Hey, did you read it?" Can I read it? But your stupid signature in my book? I didn't say that, but that's what I'm wondering. He goes, "No, yeah, you gotta open it. You gotta open the book. You gotta read it." I'm like, "All right, I read it." And he's literally staring at me, watching me read this. He just wants the reaction of me laughing. And here's what he writes. And this is why. Because he didn't sign his name. He wrote as if he was Tim Tebow. And he said, to David, as an evangelical Christian football star, I've turned down more ass you've seen, Tim Tebow. and he's like, he has his hand out, like how you seen, like when he tells you, if you ever seen a stand-up, that's his delivery. He's like waiting for me to laugh. I'm like, you seriously care about me laughing, and I think that is so freaking cool that you care so much about my response. How cool is that?
Yeah, the fact that he was like there like a little kid, like no, you gotta read it. Open the book and look inside. Because there's you got some words in there that you got to read there, and
it's the Turd Ferguson that's funny because it's a big hat. Yeah. It's a silly hat.
Oh my god, no, that's perfect.
It's a big hat.
It's a character,
yeah. I mean, look, that's the thing about doing in-person radio and old media and all that is that you would get those guests there, and sometimes you would have really fun interactions and fun times like that, and. it was always fun, because we didn't have a lot of guests there in studio, but when we did, it was a lot of fun. And what I love about that picture is like everybody was there that day. We have that picture from that day. We were all there. Sarah actually came in that day, and Kyle, who like booked guests for us, he came in like 3 times ever, and Kyle's in that picture. So
I was looking at that. I was like, wait, who's that guy?
yeah, that's Kyle. Kyle and his wife Heather used to help us book celebrity guests. So I just thought it was so funny. But Liev, it is. I know you need to rest your voice because you're going to be getting back out there on Monday. So you got some heavy lifting to do to keep to basically keep the entire Los Angeles market afloat as being the signature voice of
that is my job. Yes.
Yeah, of Southern California.
Yeah.
If you can ever stay healthy, Will and I would love to meet up with you at Rock and Brews, but we're gonna have to sit out on the patio 8 feet away from you. But we still want to see you, though.
I can't get rid of COVID.
No, it's not even COVID related. We just don't want to be that close to you in general. We don't want to catch whatever it is that makes you who you are.
So if somebody wants to make a JPEG of Liev and the COVID virus, like the microscope COVID virus, and they want to take that and make it into a poster for Brokeback Mountain, and Liev saying, "COVID, I can't quit you." I'll give them. You know what? I'll give them Here's what I'll give. I'll give you a Bladtcast mug. I never give this to anybody because I'm always afraid of mailing them. But I'll figure out. I'll wrap it in bubble wrap or something. So if somebody makes that. We will definitely do that. Well, Liev, thank you for coming back to your old stomping grounds of the Bladtcast, and we appreciate you playing hurt, as they say. I know that you haven't been feeling well, but it's always great to be able to visit with you. And Will and I will definitely make sure that we get together and we each get a turn swabbing your nostril to make sure that you're still healthy.
Great! Can't wait till you guys both. Invade and violate my nostrils again.
Well, that's not the cavity that you were hoping for, but we'll settle for the nose.
We'll say this about Norm though. Just to wrap it up before I say goodbye, it's very sad to see somebody who I think was genuinely just a nice guy and very talented, and it's sad if you really think about it. He probably won't go down and be remembered by a lot of people. And that's crazy to think because he is so talented. And I mean, if you look forward to the future 20, 30 years from now, dude's not going to be remembered. And that's crazy. And so it should be a reminder to a lot of people, make the most of every moment and try to be as impactful as possible.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. This is Preacher Dave. And by the way, Dominicus Saxon says, I miss Liev's Cactus Dave, where he would do the fake Texas accent, because when you were leaving us for country radio, you became Cactus Dave, and now he's Preacher Dave. So praise Liev. And, I think I mentioned to you in a text, Liev, and I'll let you go in a moment. The last time that I saw Norm I was, again, one of those, like, I don't belong in this room, but I've been able to talk my way into it, so I'll be there. But David Spade had his show on Comedy Central. And guests on that show were Norm, Dennis, and Kevin Nealon. And so they were all, hanging out. And so I know, obviously I know Dennis very well, but I know Norm fairly well. Norm's mom was there, and she was like the sweetest woman ever. And like, even Norm, every once in a while, I was like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that in front of my mom. I'm like, oh my God, even Norm realizes that there's things you don't say in front of your mother. But look, that you can find that episode of the show. It was good. But man, if the show had been them talking in that dressing room that I was sitting in, none of them would have had a career. Just none of the things that they talked about. And it was fun to, get to see them in a natural environment like that. And, I've seen Norm perform, on stage a few times, and just professionally, it was just like, he didn't care if a joke was going well. He's like, I think this is funny, and I'm going to still go with it. And, that's why, look, that joke that's been making the rounds is when he was on Conan and he told that moth joke that's like 4 minutes long. And anybody who hasn't seen it, make sure you find it. And oh my God, it's this long joke. And he's like, oh no, I've got 4 minutes to fill. I've got a joke that lasts that long. So anyway, yes, I do agree that Norm didn't get the credit that I think he deserves. but I hope that, sort of these last few days, it has felt like everybody's got either a Norm story or like, here's my favorite clip. And that's the beauty of it. There's so much stuff out there. Like I know a guy who worked on Opie and Anthony's for a long time, and that was not a show that I ever really listened to. I was more of a Stern guy, but he posted all these clips of like Norm on Opie and Anthony. I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to be listening to those, over the weeks ahead. So there's so much out there, and everybody's got memories to share, and it's great. And Liev, I know that you've got some great jokes out there too, and for your career's sake, I'll make sure that I start putting the original episodes of the Bladtcast all back up there, and I'll tag you on Facebook when I do. Okay.
I have 3 things I want to say before I get off. And I'm not going to say a damn one of them because they're all going to get me in trouble.
Well, you can text them to me, and I'll make Will say them
each individually.
That's perfect.
I'll wait for that because I have your number.
So that you could get his new number.
Yeah, way to go, buddy.
All right, well,
you know what? I don't feel bad. You know what?
Yeah.
You can keep coughing.
And by the way, Sam Whitfield genuinely loves you. He wants the world to know that he is Team Liev forever.
Come over, buddy. All right. Hey, can't wait to hang out with you and Will and TK. Why don't you come back? And man, I so badly want to say something inappropriate and I can't. And I will text you.
I know,
right now.
which
that's great.
Kind of makes this even funnier.
Yeah, that's true.
We all know like the kind of direction you want to go, and you can't. It's great.
Like I could say something even so subtle right now that I might be able to get away with, but I'm so scared of everything right now. I'm not.
No, it's not worth it. It's yeah. Yeah.
So
well,
love all 3 of you.
Yes.
And
and what that means is fuck Jeff. That's what you're trying to say.
Who the fuck's Jeff?
Yeah. Well, that's what you were really trying to say. All right.
Goodbye.
All right.
All right,
Thank you. Bye. Oh my God. Who was that masked man? And, when I talked to him in March, he was so paranoid about COVID. He was so worried about catching it. So when he told me that he had it, I was like, well, what are you doing? And
you mean March 2020?
March 2021. When I saw him after I went to the Kissed Alive, did that show in a parking lot down in Lake Elsinore. And so on the way back, I met up with him at a bar that was very crowded, a little crowded for my taste, let's just say. But we sat outside, and I was like, that's what I found out. I'm like, okay, so he had bought some Moderna stock and, all of that. And so when he had it, he obviously was freaked out. And I even told you guys that when we were going to have him on episode 450, the reason he wasn't on is because his voice was like lost, like he just couldn't talk. And I don't think he was feeling as well. But what he had said earlier in the week was like, yeah, I'll be on as long as I'm not on a ventilator by then. So, he was definitely making a lot of jokes with sort of that nervous laughter, because I mean, what we remember about Liev is how nervous he was about flying. So anytime he had a flight, he was always like, yeah, except of course if my plane crashes, and you could, he could joke about it, but then if you said it, he's like, oh my God, no, don't say that. That's when he would get very serious, I think. Well, I like that our memory lane remembering Norm MacDonald spent so much time talking to Liev, but I really wanted him to share his Tim Tebow book, because I just remember that, and it's funny because the little bit that I know Norm, I can visualize him just like the big smile of like, well, have you read it? Why don't you open the book and look for the words in there? And it is sad to think about somebody that was that funny. And Saturday Night Live, their official Twitter, they posted about how what a comedy great he was, and their picture was him sitting at the Weekend Update desk. And I'm like, oh, so the job that you fired him from, it was like that's the way that you're choosing to honor him. And I mean, it is where people remember him. And I've talked about, like, when I was an intern at Conan, I was able to get tickets to an SNL dress rehearsal through somebody that I knew. And I went, and SNL's dress rehearsal is a half hour longer than the live show. And Weekend Update was like an easily 5 more minutes where they were trying out jokes, and I have a VHS of it. There's no one in the audience laughing except for one laugh, and it's me. I'm laughing at all these jokes that and it's just like, he had all of his running gags, like you guessed it, Frank Stallone, or Germans love David Hasselhoff, and just his stuff that like people who loved him, but man, people who didn't love him, they really had a problem with it. But I don't know. I mean, his movie Dirty Work is sort of a little bit of like a mid-grade classic. I think I loved it. I saw it in the theater, and
I loved it too.
I mean, him and Artie Lang just boy, that you want to talk about just Twitter being a dark place. Artie Lang doesn't post a lot these days, but he posted a picture of him and Norm about how much he loved Norm and how he would miss him, and thousands of comments about like I can't believe you outlived Norm. So, but and that was one of the things that I thought was when Norm passed. I was just like, man, I know that Norm would have a great joke right now about Norm passing, and he didn't leave it with us. And I think it's the interesting thing that he was sick for 10 years. And look, that goes back to times that like when we saw him in those pictures with Jason Sudeikis and all that, he may have known then. So he knew for a really long time and he worked through it. And I feel bad to make it about me. No, it's just that like I was so persistent at trying to get him for Dennis's last podcast. And, I wrote to him, I wrote to Lori Joe, and I wrote a couple of times, and I got a bunch of people, like famous people, to like retweet me asking him, because he tweeted a lot. And, so now I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, I was nagging to get him on the dumb podcast, and he's probably feeling terrible in that moment. But I don't know. So Will, I know that you got to go get your pump, and I wanted to.
My phone is also at 12%, so I might.
Yeah, no. Well, that's okay, because Liev was at about 11%, and I don't mean his phone. But in any case, I wanted to give you an opportunity for a final thought. I mean, you talked about the homeless guy with a dog joke, which is absolutely one of my favorites. Norm's first special is filled with them. Any final thoughts that you have on doing this 450-second Bladtcast? Anything that you want to share with the people before you go?
Just that it's cool, you know what I mean? Like, in a way, it's tragic, obviously, what happened, but that we all have our own memories of like working together with this person, and even in a small capacity of like a couple guest hosts or whatever it was, or calling it on the phone, or is this Norm on hold, or we got somebody fucking up my moment. But we can all share like stories of things that, like, having met him, he signs a Tebow book. Like, Jesus fuck, lady. No, this is a joke.
By the way, I'll pass long before you. I want you to do my eulogy, but I want you to be in the parking lot. Like every time he tries to say something heartfelt.
Perfect.
It was quiet. Now there's so many things happening. Anyway, that we can have this episode as outside of, it's not just us being like, man, we were all fans of this person. It's like we all met and like in some capacity, like worked with this person. So I don't know. That's really special.
Yeah, one of my Facebook pictures was I posed with Norm the time that he had Kevin Farley, Chris Farley's brother, in, and he was just so relentless to little Farley, like about like talking about how Norm had loaned him money and stuff, and he's like, I thought you weren't going to tell anybody that, and he was great at that stuff, and I think that's like the best comics, they have the stuff that they'll do to other comedians that are like, oh, I know your weak spot, so let me just go ahead and poke it. I'm not gonna go in like a matador and kill you, but I'm definitely gonna just poke it a couple of times with with a tuning fork. It was a fun part of getting to do that show, and just getting to interact with, to think about how fun it would be when Norm would sit in, when Breitbart would sit in, and the fact that neither of them are with us anymore is crazy. I mean, Breitbart's been gone almost 10 years at this point, which is just insane. We had
just a quick side note. When I went in and told you that, like, you were like, are you serious? And I said, dead serious, but I didn't mean it like in a pun way.
No, I know you didn't. And
it
Larry, just to talk about Andrew for a second, Larry O'Connor texted me, and his text was like, all it said was, "It's true," like, because he knew it was going around, and it was just like, well, that doesn't seem right. But yeah, so I think we had a lot of fun with Norm, and that's the way I remember him, and all the comedy that's out there. Anybody who hasn't watched the almost 2-hour compilation of his appearances from the Dennis Miller Show, and anybody who wants some of those guest host appearances, just you can find me. You can ask me. I'll share them. I don't want to post them, but we can share them. We can be part of that community. Will Sterling, if people want to see some of your tasteful nudes, Will Sterling _, right?
That's me. Yep.
All right, and we'll go live from the Kiss concert on the 25th down in Chula Vista. And by the way, we are definitely
like this.
Yeah, we are definitely stopping for an Oreo cookie shake on the way.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, Will Sterling, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Sorry, I fucked it up.
No, honestly,
I just wanted to throw in, when you were doing your Norm tribute, you started out, you were like, and it's tragic. And I really thought you were talking about your mustache. I had to wait for like 5 minutes to get that out because you just kept going.
Well, and you know what? We're glad you got it out. So, William, I can't wait to see you, because now that you live in the LBC, it's going to take a big event for us to get together. But I will. That's the JPEG for the episode right there. We will talk to you soon, Agent Starling. Looking forward to having an excuse to have you back on the Bladtcast very soon. Thank you, Will.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Lex. Oh my goodness. So I think that it was fun that Thomas Parham brings up, didn't one of the network suits make Lorne fire Norm from Weekend Update? The Don Ohlmeyer was an executive. He was friends with O.J. Simpson. So allegedly, he took it very personally that Will made so many O.J. jokes. And do you remember his joke the Saturday after the O.J. verdict, Ken?
No.
Well, it's official. Murder is legal in the state of California. And they had a picture, because I worked in the research department when I was an intern there. The picture that they used, they had one that they called Smilin' OJ. So like they always used Smilin' OJ, and you gotta pay the AP every time you use it. But it was like, oh, they got a lot of mileage out of Smilin' OJ, whoever took it. And here's the thing I'll say about that, though, to Thomas Parham. If Lorne Michaels wanted him to continue doing Weekend Update, he would have continued doing Weekend Update. So Norm gets a pass by some people on that. And look, I'll say the first show that I did when I was an intern on SNL was the show after Norm had gotten fired from Weekend Update, but Norm was still on the show. And it was just a very weird vibe. There were like different camps. And I love Colin Quinn forever, because he encouraged me to submit jokes to him for Weekend Update. And, he eventually did use one of mine. Yeah. So just in the way that Norm had encouraged someone that I knew to do the same. So, but I always was such a huge Norm fan that it was like literally anything they needed me to do. It was like, go pick up Norm's dinner from Ruth's Chris, it's the steakhouse right down the street. And he knew that he didn't stay for the whole season. He was gone after a little bit, but he had a few weeks that he stuck around just doing sketches. So they had a list of sketches that he had done in the past that they wanted me to compile and put together on a tape. And so I got to work very closely, because I went 6 days a week as an intern, because I knew that I'm like, if you're going to be there, you got to be there. You got to really, you don't want to miss anything. Don't just go for a few days because of what college credit you need. And so I was there. So Lori Jo just, said, can you find these sketches? And, I was doing it because it's like, well, that's what you do when you're an intern. Somebody asks you to do stuff. And then she was like, oh, Norm wants to pay you for it. And, so I got a personal check from Norm, actually, which I cashed. No, I cashed, of course. Yeah. But, I think that's why Lori Jo is so great, because she knew that, like, Norm might not have thought about it, not anything negative about Norm, but she's just like, well, you got to pay this intern who's doing it. I was like, oh yeah, of course, so we did. And there's somebody that I've talked about who I didn't like that had me do the same thing. And they tried to not pay me. And then the aforementioned Dan Wilson in research was like, you got to pay him for that. Right. And to his credit, Chris Kattan did pay me for it. So at least I did get money for him. I did it for Tim Meadows as well. Tim Meadows, nobody had to tell him to pay me. Yeah, look, it was great. It was fun to sort of get to know him, but because I was all in for Norm, I was able to, keep in touch with Lori Joe and got to keep in touch with Norm just a little bit. Like if we hadn't done the Dennis Miller show, like if I hadn't worked on it, I would have run out of excuses to try and talk to Norm, so eventually she would have been like, what does this kid want? So it was great that we had that relationship. And, I would see him. Sometimes I would go see Norm do shows, and he and Dennis did shows a couple of times. Ken, you didn't work there when we did. It was, I went with Coelho and Sabes. It was Dennis, Norm, Spade, and Lovitz too, I think. And, it was all out at the San Manuel casino. It was like Thursday Night Live, they called it. It was amazing. So, a lot of fun times. Farad Muhammad has a great, I love that Will Ferrell's Harry Carey called Colin Quinn Norm at one point. Hey, Norm, did you gain weight? Thomas Parham, Christian Blatt, spilling tea, delicious. Yeah, I know. I have a story that I go back and forth on whether or not I should tell. And I will tell a story because it's funny, and I feel like if I had asked Norm if I could tell this story, he'd be like, sure. So I won't identify the person in question, but there was someone who was interested in Norm at one point, and we'll just say at one point, and he was just not into it. And my theory is that there probably had been a moment between them, and then he was ready to move on. But whatever it was, he was not interested. And so, he was talking to them, and, even in the late 90s, early 90s, whenever this was, just keeping it vague, you always knew what people's politics were. And so he's just like, yeah, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, she's probably had like 3 or 4 abortions. So I'm just going to talk about how, it's murder, right? Yeah, abortion is murder. And she left him alone.
Makes sense.
So the reason I tell that story is not to embarrass him, but just because of the way that he, matter of fact, is like, and I looked at her and I thought, well, she's probably had 3 or 4 abortions. And, there's like a plane crash out my window. So maybe I shouldn't have told that. But if anybody says anything, it's Thomas Parham liked that I was telling tales out of school. And I don't know. I thought that was funny. So in any case, I think that it was so fun. Obviously, I loved working with Dennis Miller. He was my favorite comedian from the time I was in middle school. And then Norm just sort of emerged as like 1A. And clips of Norm on Dennis's HBO show are some of the best clips that are going around right now. Salmon shared one with me, that he had done a show in San Francisco, and there were protesters outside, and the dad had a sign that said, "I'm proud of my gay son." So look for that clip. I'm telling everyone. It's very funny, and it's very Norm. And I love Norm as a comedian, and look, anybody as a public figure, if you want to come out of the woodwork and tell stories that you think aren't great, that's your business. But I never had a bad thing to say about him. I've never had a bad thought about him. And like his roast of Bob Saget, where he's like intentionally telling like the hackiest, cheesiest jokes ever. It's like so brilliant that like the audience doesn't know what to make of it, but the other comics are all dying, It's like, Jim Norton, he's a colorful character, green with envy, and just like, I don't know. There's so much of that stuff, so much great stuff. And there's so much to look at, but I don't know, Ken. I mean, how fun was it to have somebody like Norm come and sit in and like, first of all, I mean, Dennis usually wasn't there. We very rarely saw him,
Right.
So like, our guest hosts like Norm and Breitbart, they would come in. So it's like, oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be like a radio show, you know?
Oh yeah. Like I said at the very beginning, just like because like he's funny in that way that just like it's intelligent and it makes you feel like intelligent. It was just like the whole time that he was around, he was just like so funny without intentionally being funny. Like he was just kind of being him, and it just really worked very well. And he just, it's always nice when someone that you like as like a celebrity or something is like really cool when you meet them and work with them, and it's just like they're just like everybody else, and like that stuff is always really good, and he was very good about like that.
Yeah, and it's just funny too to like think about, as I remember one of the last times he guest hosted, just randomly we were talking about, I don't know, voice actors, and I forget who had been in something, but it just sort of, we were talking and it came out that we both had seen the Winnie the Pooh movie that was out at the point. And I went to go see it with my mom when she was in town, because I think that at that point she must have thought I was still 8. But we went and we had a delightful time. And he was like, what are the odds that 2 grown men have both seen the Winnie the Pooh movie? And I was just like, well, yeah, you're right. And just like
good point.
Little moments like that were funny. And he had like these little like ways that he would talk. Sometimes he would just be like, what the H? Like he was really trying to make what the H like a thing at one point for him, just like if he was not outraged, but if he was just exasperated about something. Yeah. And and it's like if Lori Jo didn't say what the H, he'd be like, what? And she's like, oh yeah, what the H? Yeah. So just little memories like that. And it's fun. And like I said, as sad as it was to hear that Norm had passed, just the outpouring of emotion and just the bombardment of clips and being able to go down memory lane and, talk to you guys about that great Ann Coulter interview.
So good. So very good.
Yeah, I know it. So that was fun. And Coltrane, so we've had you on like twice in a month. So let's make it a habit. We gotta dust off Coltrane's corner, find out some more to talk about. And I've got a few things coming up in the weeks ahead here on the Bladtcast. We are going to, for our audio listeners, we're going to have a compilation talking about the new Marvel movie Shang-Chi, which will be made up of some conversations from my show, Marvel Movie Talk, but one big episode there. Had a great conversation with Touré, who wrote a book about Prince, so that'll be coming up soon, and a ton of musician interviews that I've been talking about how I want to really get through them and share them with people that are just audio-only listeners. But all this stuff is available on the Bladtcast YouTube page, Bladtcast. And you know what? Farad Muhammad, I didn't even remember this, but Farad Muhammad reminded me what the H was a segment on his sports show. A segment. But that's right. I forgot about that sports show. I love that sports show, that he did for Comedy Central. In any case, Dominicus Saxon says it all. This was a great episode. I don't know why you have to sully it with the second part of your statement. This was a great episode. Yes, Norm will be missed so much, but let's focus on the fact that we had a great episode. And I never know when we'll get Liev again. I mean, it's he's under quarantine, so it's like he kind of had to,
Yep.
Do we need to? What's that?
He had no excuses.
Yeah, and final thought: do we need to do an intervention? I don't mean for Liev. I mean for Will's mustache. Like, do we need to sit him down and talk to him about it, or do you think that he'll grow out of it?
I mean, like I said, my first thought was just like, okay, is the Will Tourage going in a different direction? I mean, he didn't get the Hallmark thing, so he's going the complete opposite direction.
He's going the John Holmes route. Yeah, exactly. Well, Coltrane, it is always fun to talk to you. We appreciate you making the time, and sad occasion to remember Norm, but we had a lot of laughs, which I think I don't ever want to pretend to know what someone would think, but I think if Norm would appreciate anything, it would be how many laughs that people were able to get in after his passing. Dominicus Saxon wants us to do a GoFundMe to buy a razor, and Sam thinks we should vote yes. in order of the intervention. In any case, thank you to everybody. We had a very lively live chat, pun intended, I guess. It actually wasn't intended, but I'm going to have to embrace it now and just deal with it forever and ever. And Farad Muhammad makes a great point. If the Will Taraj goes astray, I hope the Farad Taraj will kick in. I do too. I will leave the Will Taraj for the Farad Taraj. Yeah. Whichever Taraj will have us, right, Ken?
Absolutely. Sign me up. I'm here.
Yeah. All right. So thanks to everybody. We will see you next week. Our audio audience will get our Shang-Chi episodes, followed by the conversation on Prince. And stay tuned to the Bladtcast YouTube channel. Please subscribe and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Coltrane, you're off all social media now, right?
I mean, I think I still have a Facebook page. But
yeah, but you don't want anybody finding you on there. So, just tell me when you want Coltrane back and we'll have him back. How about that? That's easy enough,
That works.
it's like Total Request Live. In any case, thank you.
I probably still have a MySpace page too.
Yeah, well, you can find you on there. Yeah, I still have a MySpace page because I don't remember the password and I couldn't delete it if I tried.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In any case, thanks to everybody. We will see you next time on the Bladtcast.